everybody, I always forget to unmute my microphone. Welcome to the show. Welcome to After TCGS, the show after the show about the show. Thank you for joining us. We've got a very fun guest joining us today. If you like that intro music, that was provided by Gethhead Jared Sparks. And if you like our logo, that's provided by Gethhead old R.E. Clifton, who have been helping us out. If you have anything that you'd like to contribute to this after show, we would love to hear from you. Reach out to me, Bryson Wallace, and Gethheads. There's been a bunch of Gethheads that have submitted ideas for the show and logos and music and stuff like that. So if you've got anything, we would love to incorporate it here. This is what I hope to be a community effort of an after show. So we'll get right to it. My guest today is you see her every week in the Gethheads group, but she's got a bigger role within the show in general. Please help me welcome Sarah Davis to the show. Sarah, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good, thanks for joining us. So what exactly is your role on the show?
I am the social/digital producer for the show.
All right.
So yeah, I do a lot of different things.
So are you like a one-person operation at the show, or do you have even a small team around you?
Technically, I am my own department, but there are many, many, many people who make the stuff we do possible. I'm kind of just the coordinator for all of those bits and pieces.
Yeah, yeah. So how did you get started working on the show? For anybody who's not familiar with you amongst the community, what's your background in getting involved with the show?
So I started watching the show. I think the first episode I ever watched was the Kickboxer episode. So pretty early on, I had friends on Tumblr who would not shut up about it, Caroline Anderson in particular. And so I checked it out, and sorry, I have my cat trying to bite me as I'm talking.
Well, the rule here is that people want to see the animal whenever you mention it, so you're going to have to show us the cat now. What's your cat's name?
Find him. He's our. I have two. One is Percy and one is Mako. They've both been on Sandwich Night before. This one's Mako.
Oh, hey Mako, what's up?
Just hanging out. And then Percy was the one that was trying to bite me that has now already run for cover. But when he comes out, I'll get him up. Oh wait, there we go. Hold on. Let me see. There we go.
Percy.
What's up, dude? Playing with the headphone cord.
Percy, we're in the middle of something right now. We don't got time for this. Oh, adorable meow. Adorable meow.
Yeah.
So your friend was posting about it on Tumblr. So way back when you got into the show.
Yes. And then I think the first one I ever watched live was Ruin the Show.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went on a pretty solid run of watching live every week for a long time. I ended up getting a new job sometime around when they moved to the Harlem studio.
Yeah.
So I didn't watch actually a lot of that run for a long time because I had a job that I had to get up stupid early for.
Yeah.
Just in the last year, I've watched some of those episodes for the first time. And then, yeah, just have always kind of kept up with the show. I actually the first time I ever saw a TCGS, I went to DCM by myself, the Del Close Marathon. I had never seen long form improv, but I knew a bunch of people who did comedy I liked would be there. And so I went by myself and went to the TCGS stage show, which was absolutely buck wild. And that was kind of the first time I met people in person. And then I went to that every year up until this last year. So like 5 or 6 years I did that. And yeah, it's been like, sometimes I was more involved on Tumblr. Sometimes I was involved more on Gethheads. I got super into the chat when that was first starting out.
Yeah.
And yeah, eventually when this run at True TV was coming up, Chris literally sent me a message on Twitter and was like, hey, this is kind of crazy, but do you want to come do this thing? And I was like, that is crazy, but then it worked out, so here we are.
So is this what you were doing at those other jobs prior to this, or is this a departure from what you were doing before with the social producing?
It is not what I was doing at my day job, but it is what I was doing freelance. Like, I was running the cracked.com Tumblr before this, and I was doing Facebook work for them.
Okay.
And I was also doing freelance work running, like, Twitter accounts for actors and stuff like that. So, a departure in terms of like finally turning my fun side gig into my full-time day job.
Yeah, awesome. That's always a good.
Yeah.
That's always a good time when you can turn that fun side gig into a full-time deal. And for anybody, not to completely dox you, but I think you've been open about this, is that for anybody finding the digital footprint, you are Laughter Key, correct?
Oh yeah, yes, very much so. Yeah, that is.
If that was
I have
some
a very, very
secret.
common name, and so the SEO on my given name is kind of a disaster zone. So Laughter Key is what I go by.
Yeah. I remember when I first started getting into the show, like in 2014 is when I first got into the show. I remember seeing Laughter Key all over the place, especially in the chat once that first became a thing. And so it wasn't until recently of you and I chatting that I pieced that together. So this was mind-blowing for me of placing Laughter Key as being you as a person.
It's funny. I forget that on Facebook it's not just like a given that people don't just know it. And so, I get that semi-frequently, and every time I'm like, oh, right, yeah, that's a thing. Like, yeah, no, it's totally... I think I'm open about it. I'm just really bad at communicating sometimes. Again, ironically, considering my given job.
So, now, speaking of the Facebook community, specifically Gethheads, which is obviously what we're streaming on right now, I don't want to get into this specifically, but I've got a question that wraps around it. I would say in the past week we've had a couple of flare-ups amongst the community, some things, just community guidelines kind of realm of things, I would say. Do you happen to have any like general rules of thumb that you'd like to share with the community? We've got a growing community with the success of the show in its current incarnation. Do you have any rules of thumb that you'd like to share with anybody for the community?
I mean, not really rules so much as just, it's stuff that I think we do very well as a community, but it does get harder to do as more and more, as the community gets bigger.
Yeah.
Like we've done it well by default as a smaller group. But I also think it's sort of scaling well, and it's just sort of that rule of, be cool to people, be chill, and if you see someone saying they're uncomfortable about a thing, be respectful about that instead of doubling down.
Yeah.
Just, kind of all the things about just being a good person in general, but also speaking up for people when, they say they're uncomfortable if someone else does double down. Like, it's stuff that I see everybody doing already anyways.
Yeah.
With very, very few exceptions. So just kind of, keeping on with what you're doing already would be fantastic. It's just, it can be tricky to do when there's more and more people and more new people. But even then, like I've done community management stuff in the past and it has never been this delightful or this easy. Are you enjoying this? It's a nice touch for this.
We were just going to ignore it for as long as you were going to.
Yep. My cat's partial tail in front of my face. To reference my brother and me thing, the midnight amendments are always a good rule, and it's sort of just, come on, be cool, nice. So
yeah,
I'm sure I butchered that, and someone will correct me, but yeah, midnight amendments are a good rule of thumb on my book.
Good rule of thumb. Yeah, when I say rule of thumb, I don't necessarily mean like, steadfast rules that our community adheres to, just more so like general, like... the basic, like, don't be a dick scenario.
Yeah. I think if you go into the chat room, it's like, don't be a dick. If someone tells you to chill out, and like, just that's pretty much it. Keep clothes on, skill.
I did. I had to come up with like a kind of like community guidelines kind of deal, and I definitely did steal from the Gethheads chat through the I Can Has chat. I definitely stole from there because I thought whoever wrote that had done like a very succinct job of saying don't be a dick.
Yeah, that was, I think both of those were made by sort of a group of Gethheads talking to each other and or chatters.
Yeah.
Just kind of saying like, how can we most broadly say, just be cool.
Yeah.
That's it. Of course, the chat one has the caveat of keep your clothes on because it's an under 18 chat room on a website that's made for Reddit's Gone Wild. Yeah. I won't get into it. That website is a delightful experience and also a nightmare.
Speaking of
hand in hand.
Speaking of all sorts of weird ways in which people can interact with the show? I know that it's been mentioned like flat out on the show itself, and then it's been posted in Gethheads a couple of times, but I feel like more people need to know about the robot website. I know that you posted about it today. How has that been received from the office? I talked to Keith a little bit about it, but I want to get your thoughts on how the office is receiving the robot website.
The robot website, I absolutely love it. It is kind of a dichotomy of people are either like delighted by it or irritated by it. With one particular person being irritated by it, which is of course Patrick. But yeah, it's kind of like the analogy that I've heard the most is that it's sort of like having a puppy.
Yeah.
Like you got to keep it out of certain areas. You have to check on it. Sometimes it hurts itself or like loses a wheel and you have to go find the thing it's missing and put it back together. And but yeah, I think they're hilarious and I absolutely love them. I wish they were on more often. And it seems like they're going to be. So yes, I would love to see more fans playing with those.
Is the second robot still around? Because I know that so far there's just been the one robot going at a time kind of thing, but I know that there was 2 robots.
Yes, the other one, I think C2G2 is also around. It's on less often. I'm not 100% sure why. I think there was something about charging it for a while there.
Yeah.
So it has been on since they've been back at the office, but it's much less often than the other one. But yeah, they are awesome. And I also am very, very glad that the ping pong cannon has not ever been turned on in the office, although it is there.
It's still around? The ping pong cannon is still around?
Yeah, when you come in the front door, it's literally aimed at the front door. It's just not on. Yeah, it's great. One day I walked past it and the red light was on and I was terrified.
Oh, absolutely not. I would not be about that. So I understand if anybody does put any duct tape around the nozzle of that ping pong cannon.
Yes.
Yeah, I was watching the robot earlier today, and of course people were frequently going into Patrick's office, and I started thinking to myself, well, if I were Patrick, I would just log onto the website and hit backwards a bunch of times to get the robot out of there. And then literally within a half a second, that's what he was doing. So at the very least, there's a defense that you can have in the office, which is to control it yourself, I guess.
Absolutely, yes. And I also pointed out that he did a fine thing in making his account his own name, so people know when it's him specifically trying to counteract their pictures. So
that's true. That's true. He could have gone anonymous with that. So
100%.
Within your role on the show, we see you posting the Skype forms every week to get the word out for your requesting Skype calls. What is your experience or your role in things like the mating game episode or even the spooky episode this past week? Do you follow up on the coordination of reaching out to those people, or are you more so getting the word out?
Yeah, I'm more getting the word out side of things.
Yeah.
Alex is one of our producers, and she's like the Skype queen.
Yeah.
She and 1 or 2 other people sort of work together, but she's the main person who goes through and really vets everything. And we have always, like a writer or 2 will check in and say like, oh, that sounds interesting. But really it's just Alex making sure everything works, that everyone's responding, and we go from there.
Yeah.
She gives updates here and there to say like, oh, hey, this is what we've got so far. We've got like however many people responding. And if they think they might want to take more calls than that, if we, might be a call heavy episode, they'll say like, oh, can we try asking again? And I'm sure you guys have seen a couple times in Gethheads where I've been like, no, really, we need more people to sign up.
Yeah. So you're getting the word back from Alex that we need more people, or we should probably get the word out more. Gotcha.
Yeah, and she's awesome. And if anyone has ever been a Skype caller or even potentially been a Skype caller, they've done probably a test with her at some point to make sure their setup worked, and she's the coolest. She's super awesome.
Yeah, I was a Skype caller on the Death episode, and so Alex and we did a test call, and it was very weird because for me, like, I just saw the camera feed at the set itself, and then Alex was this disembodied voice telling me that, like, okay, everything looks good.
Yes. So it's so funny because I had been a Skype caller on the Fusion series a couple times. Like, I had never gotten through, but I'd done that same process. And I had talked to Alex, and I had never seen her face because you see the studio feed.
Yeah.
So when I first started working here, it took me probably 2 months to realize that the Alex that I had talked to was this Alex.
This is Alex, yeah.
Until at one point she sent out an email to people who had Skyped in the past to say like, oh, we have this very specific thing that we're asking people if you want to maybe try again. And I got the email. And I was like, oh, you're okay. I get this now. This makes so much more sense. But also, a fun little tidbit is that I sit next to Alex when she's doing those test calls a lot of the time, just by chance, because that's where our seating is in the studio. So a lot of the times, if you're doing a test call with Alex, like right before a show, I'm probably watching. There's been many times when I've seen a Gethhead kind of up on her Skype screen, and I'm like, tell them I said hi. And she's like, I have to do my job.
I know, you guys are nothing if not approachable, but sometimes you just got to test somebody's Skype connection, you know?
She's like, I got to get through like 20 of these.
Oh, I can't even imagine the amount that would go into, especially like last night's episode of everybody being mobile and locations. I can't even imagine what that was like for you guys. You said that you just recently were able to accept mobile calls through Skype, which was great for people going out into spooky places last night. But as we saw in the episode, sometimes connection is still just a crazy issue.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you're by Alex potentially if she's testing calls right before the show. Where are you typically when the show's going on, and what are you? My main question is, like, are you solely the person that's like gifting everything?
So no, this is interesting. So I'm in the control room during the show, and it's myself and also Katla, who's an employee of True TV. She's on their social team. She's the one who actually does sort of like the front-facing live tweeting during the episode. So she's the one who has access to the live feed and is pulling those GIFs and those screen caps as it happens live and putting those tweets out. And then I do sort of the community management side of things when we're live. So she's the one who's like, here's the content. And I'm the one who's like, hey guys, what's up? Let's talk about the show.
Yeah.
So while she's doing that, I'm tracking, our mentions and replies on Twitter, conversation in the hashtag on Twitter, our Facebook messages, the Gethheads thread, comments on our Facebook page, comments on our Instagram. Just sort of like anywhere that there can be conversation happening about the show that people might have questions they want answered. I'm trying to keep an eye on all of that and answer as much as I can while we're live. And obviously I don't catch everything, but that's sort of also what my Thursday night into Friday morning into Friday at work is, just like staying up to date with those, because, once we finish our East Coast and Central, we're live. But then there's a replay, and then we go live. Not live, but it plays on the West Coast. So kind of constantly throughout the night, people are seeing the episode for the first time.
Yeah.
So you're
catching up on those. I don't
keep up with all of it, but I try to.
So you're catching up on like any West Coast tweets or anything like that. That's your like Friday morning, is what you're saying.
Yeah. 100%. Like just going back through and saying like, oh, okay, here's a whole new batch of people who watched the show. Let's see what they had to say about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fun. It's interesting. It's also kind of bizarre. I was actually talking to Keith about this earlier today, that I'm so involved in talking to people while the show is happening. A lot of the times I don't get to watch it, even though it's happening right in front of me on a monitor. So like I listen to it, but I don't really get to see it. So when I get to work on Friday is when I have these moments of like, oh, I don't know what they're talking about here. Like I didn't see that happen. I don't remember that. I was doing something else. So I have to like, yeah.
No, I was going to ask you, because I am usually on the Gethheads spoiler thread that you set up every week. And even that, and trying to watch just as a fan, can be overwhelming, and I can kind of miss things. So I can't even imagine where you're saying that you're following up on anywhere the conversation can be happening. At what point do you get to see the bits? So
yeah, it's usually Friday afternoon at some point. At some point on Friday afternoon, I'll get my hands on the live cut and I'll sit down and watch it. Yeah. And there are always moments where I'm like, oh, that's what that looked like. Like everyone was talking about this, but now I see it play out. I get you now.
Yeah. So how late are your nights on show night? Because you guys are going live at 11 p.m. We're talking it's a late night.
Yeah. We generally come in a little bit later on Thursdays to even it out a little bit, but it is still, it's a very long day. Episode ends at midnight, and then we usually have at least one meeting, if not two, maybe three. And sometimes they're 5-minute meetings, and sometimes they're all half-hour meetings. Like, it just kind of depends. And so it can be anywhere from, like, we're done at 12:30 to we're done at 1:30. And even then, you got to kind of go back to the production office, get your stuff together, so there's always another half hour built into that kind of on your personal wrap up.
Yeah.
It can be, I've left sometimes at 12:45 and sometimes I've left at like 4 a.m.
Oh, well, I mean, you guys are putting on a great show, and it's all in the effort of putting something unique and silly on TV. So it feels weird to say that we appreciate it because we're just making silly TV, but we do appreciate it.
And honestly, like, it's a blast for us too. Like, it's a lot of work, but also, like, when we go back to the production office, sometimes I'll sit there with my laptop and like read messages and answer people for a while, but like everyone's around.
Yeah.
And it's fun to just kind of hang out after the show and be like, that was really fun. We did good. So, it's definitely a mix of like, I could bail immediately, but I don't because it's fun. And sometimes you go to playwrights and, so it's all sort of built in. It's both sides of that. It's a blast. We love doing it. So
now, what are some ways, this has come up a couple of times in Gethheads, what are some ways that your role is in regards to like the community and that side of things? So what are ways that the community of Gethheads could make your job easier, or best ways to interact, or like, I'm not looking for like do things a specific way, but like I know somebody mentioned today of like, if you see a sponsored post, like put out the good word in like the comments, which I thought was a good point, because a lot of times the only people responding to that are probably people that have a negative outlook on it. Is there anything that would be a positive effect for a Gethhead to do with their efforts online?
I really would just say, like, the hashtag Chris Gethard show is like the main thing that everyone's paying attention to in terms of like fans people. So use it as much as you can, be generous with it, but also like really the main thing is just sort of the same way we're super welcoming to new people in Gethheads. I would say just continue that outside of Gethheads, which everyone kind of does anyways. Like, I see so frequently people tweeting about the show and saying like, oh, I've never seen this before, but it's so much fun, I'm going to go back and watch all the other episodes.
Yeah.
And people being like, oh, there's a Facebook group, like, welcome to the family, like, welcome to this weird thing. And it's everyone from Shannon and Chris and Connor and everyone to fans of the show sort of having that reaction to new people, which is super rad. Like, that's why this job is so much fun, because the community is so great. But like, that's the main thing, because the more new people get that reaction from fans and cast members, the more they're going to have the same love for it that we have. Like, it's just sort of like doing what we do in a more public way.
Yeah.
Which is already happening. So, but that is really the main thing, I would say. And that's probably a more personal, like, it just makes me happy because I also started out as a fan, and that's my favorite fucking thing about this community. So
yeah. No. That makes total sense. Mary in the chat, Mary's at a Halloween party, so she's not actually watching, but she commented to say hi, and she wanted to know if you had any thoughts on Big Man 6. It's come up for most of our guests. Do you have any personal theories about Big Man 6?
I don't have really a personal theory. I really do like the idea of the alternate dimensions and that there is one big man per dimension.
Okay.
That pleases me intensely. Mainly because there's so many little weird corners of the show that you can dig into to be like, yeah, here it is.
Yeah.
So I enjoy that one a whole lot. In terms of Big Man 6 himself, though, I am not sure. Got
no ideas, but the multi-dimensional aspects of Big Men, that's what's speaking to you. Okay, all right. Now, I don't know if you're privy to any of this information. I'm only asking you because I've seen you post about it before, so feel free to just tell me, Bryson, I got nothing. Get the hell out of here. Viewing parties, are those going to continue being a thing, or are we kind of wrapped up on viewing parties?
I honestly am not sure. I think they might be wrapped up.
Okay.
Those were actually a thing that True did on their own, which is super rad of them. They basically, like, there's always True executives at the show. And one week they heard us talking about the people who get together at Playwrights to watch the show when they don't get tickets.
Yeah.
Which, for anyone who's not local to New York, is a pub that's like 2 blocks away from the studio where a lot of people go after the show to have a drink. But also where sometimes people go to just watch the show. And they were like, oh, that's super, super cool. And like a week later, they emailed us and they were like, hey, we're thinking about doing this thing. Can you help us decide if, like, how we should do it and where? And we gave them sort of just a ton of, like, here's where people live sort of thing. Like, this is where we know we have groups of people. And then they just went from there and narrowed it down on their own and picked places on their own and then just sort of sent us the info. And we're like, hey, tell people to come.
Nice.
So yeah, like it was just a really fun, like, they didn't need to do it. It doesn't necessarily, you know, like it wasn't a huge marketing thing so much. It was just a really cool thing to do for our fans.
Yeah.
So it's possible there will be more, but I am not a super big part of that conversation. Yeah. And I haven't heard anything else. So I would say odds are wrapped, but there could be another round at some point.
Well, at the very least, thank you, True, for what did happen. Because I will say, as a Los Angeles guy, I was a little heated that there wasn't anything out here, but I get it. I get it. But yeah, I was asking too selfishly because I'm going to be in Chicago and some other places coming up for episodes, and I wanted to have the inside scoop as to whether or not I'll be able to see. Rob Spencer is saying in the chat, "Where dem kitties at?" We already saw the kitties, but Rob wants another viewing.
Oh, wait. Yes, no, Rob is a big kitty fan. Hold on. There's a very sleepy boy in front of me. I don't know if that's... There we go.
There it is.
Mm-hmm.
There it is, the one causing mischief earlier.
Yes, who is now asleep. He's been placated with cuddles.
There's them kitties, Rob. Rosa's saying she's hiding in the bathroom at work, so thank you, Rosa, for joining us, at the very least hiding in the bathroom. Well, Sarah, is there anything else that you'd like to share before we wrap things up here? I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I appreciate you talking to us on what was otherwise a night that people are at Halloween parties.
Yeah, no, I mean... Yes, but also I'm fully blanking on things right now. But also, you know, I'll just make posts in Gethheads when I finally remember. So
that is a problem.
Yeah,
that is a problem with how like approachable everybody is on the show. Is that whenever I try to think of like somebody to get a real hot scoop from on after TCGS, somebody's probably already discussed it at length in a post on Gethheads.
Yeah, or like somebody asked and someone from the show was like, "Oh no, here's the entire reason it happened this way."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like the thread. I do recommend to anybody the whole thread that went up a couple days ago about Smithgate. I know that Chris and Brett Davis went into detail in that thread there, and I was reading through it earlier, so I definitely recommend that. But Sarah, I do thank you for joining us. I do appreciate it, and yeah, I think I'm just gonna wrap this thing up. I always brain fart when I try to wrap this thing up. But Sarah, thank you.
Thank you. This was so much fun.
Yeah, have a great rest of your night.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Well, Sarah Davis, otherwise known as Laughter Key, you'll see her all the time here in Gethheads, and she's the best person for the job there. Can't thank Sarah enough for joining us here and for all she does for the community of the Chris Gethard Show. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up. It's been a long week, and I feel like I've been saying that the past couple of times. But until next time, guys, we'll see you later. Bye. I gotta get better at that.
Eloise says, Persephone, please, don't be mad.